Welcome to another episode of Financial 15. Kevin and I have some great information for you today. And a reminder, Financial 15, that's a show we provide some information, some knowledge, hopefully to improve your financial situation. Wrap all that up in 15 minutes or less. Today, we're talking about tax limits, filing deadlines, all for investors. Lots of good information. You want to stick around.
Calendar is turned, the end of February is near, which means it is tax season. Last time we talked on Financial 15, we were discussing different types of tax forms that you may receive. Today, we are going to deal with tax filings. We are going to deal with the instruments that you're putting the money into and everything along those lines. So if you want to know more about it, please watch our YouTube channel and subscribe. We have lots of information on all of these topics. You can like us on Facebook. You can also go to our website where we have tons of information on these topics and a variety of others. But today we are talking tax limits, filing deadlines for investors. Clint, what do we want to start with?
Yeah, there's lots to get to here. We're going to talk about the different limits for the various accounts, talk about how those limits are calculated, go through different filing deadlines, all in that kind of premise of taxes and filings for investors. So let's start off with the tax limits here. I'll pull this up so everyone can see. This is a Government of Canada website. I'll scroll up so you can see it is, in fact, the Government of Canada website.
Yes.
And you got a massive table here, Kevin. Look at all that data. There's quite a bit. We're going to focus our attention so that we have a better understanding. We have all the different limits here. The RRSP dollar limit, you can see the column right there. The RRSP dollar limit, that's for the tax year. So when it says 2023, yes, the 30,780, that's the 2023 tax year. So they know in advance what the limit will be. The 2021 tax year, you get a limit of 27,830, and you can see how it changes throughout the years. Then I'll scroll down to the TFSA, and you can see the limits there as well. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And you can see how it's changed over the years. Remember back in 2015, it was $10,000 there, Kevin.
Yeah, for one year.
One glorious year, and then back to the regular amount. But those are the limits for the RRSP, the limits for the TFSA on the Government of Canada website. Lots of detail there. I'll let you talk about that a little more, Kevin. Then we'll go into the formula. Exactly how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, what we're dealing with here on a variety of those things, as you can tell, I mean, the TFSA limits, as we know, they are also influenced by inflation rates. So we've been stuck at 6,000 for a while with present inflation. We could see as high as 6,500 next year. And again, on those numbers up top, we really want to concentrate on the RSP limits. That's been the biggest one. Everything else has some things on possibly your pension plans or deferred annuities, but RSPs and TFSAs are the biggest ones that we want to talk about. And that's where we're starting with this chart here. We're basically letting you know exactly. We've done these before in different videos that we've shown where we've dealt with the comparison and contrasting, but we want to make sure that you know what we're dealing with the tax filings and the deadlines. We're looking at sort of the tax deduction and the contribution limits. Now, we know that RSP contribution limits, they are defined with 18% of the previous year's earned income up to that maximum, as we stated, $29,210. Whereas the TFSA, as I just mentioned, it's a $6,000 limit right now per year. Lifetime maximum right now at 81.5, and that, of course, is influenced by inflation. But there's other options on here that we always talk about as well, aren't there, Clint?
Yeah, a couple of details here. We won't go through all this because the goal here is to focus specifically on the limits and the filing deadlines. We're looking at the limits, and Kevin just explained how those limits are calculated for the RSP, the TFSA. Important for the TFSA, you start earning TFSA room once you're 18 years of age and a Canadian resident. So if you became 18 in 2011, you're not going to have 81,500 because you missed a couple of those years prior to being 18. If you've been 18 essentially since 2009, well, you'll have the full room, the full 81,500. You don't lose it. So if you haven't used it all, it does carry forward. You can always do a catch-up contribution to make up for those prior years that you missed. Same thing with the RSP. You don't lose it. It continues to carry forward. And then the last piece on the TFSA, a bit of a difference here when it comes to limits and contribution room. You take the money out of a TFSA, you can put it back in. You get that room back. Yes. However, you have to wait until the next calendar year. RSPs, you take the money out, they tax you on it, and that's it. You don't get the room back. Once it's out, you can't put it back in. You don't regain that contribution room. So we now know what the limits are. We saw them on the government website. We understand a bit of the math that goes to determine how we calculate those limits. A common question I think people have here, Kevin, is how do they find out what their contribution room is?
Yeah, it really is a big factor. A lot of people don't know where to go. And I mean, there's a variety of different things. If we're talking about your RRSP one of the basic places to go is your notice of assessment that you would have gotten. Now, whether that's online or whether it was in paper format, there is a notice of assessment the government has to send you listing what your taxes were and also list what your RSP room is that you've got contributing going forward. That's the same. So it'll add any stuff that you've unused, anything that's been earned that you're going to get for the next tax year. That is the biggest one, is taking a look at that. But that's different than what you're going to deal with when you're talking about the options for trying to figure out your TFSA as well. So
Yeah,
I mean, these are other things to look at.
Yeah, we'll go through the TFSA option in a second. Here, quickly on the RSP, you notice of assessment, you file your tax return, you get that notice of assessment back from the government, from CRA. They actually have the whole formula on there. They'll tell you what your prior room was, what you contributed, how much you've earned based on your earned income. You get to see all the steps. The TFSA, you are correct, it is a little more different. Unfortunately, it's not on the notice of assessment. It's not as easy to find as the RSP, because it's not simply on that form for you. I'll pull it up here so that you can see. This is the government website that's coming on the screen here. How do you actually get the TFSA contribution room? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can phone the tax information phone service. There you can see the 1-800 number. If you're going to do that, you probably want to give yourself an afternoon, because it's not a fast service, at least in my experience. You're on hold for a while. Or the more user-friendly option, you have an online account with CRA, what they call My CRA. You can log in, you can see your TFSA limit. It's right there. Amongst other information, you have access to a lot of tax data through the My CRA account or the My account with Services Canada. Those are the common options, either online or through the phone call. But an important thing to note here, Kevin, when you log in online, the data might not be perfectly up to date, right?
Exactly. Yeah, normally what takes place is that they will update it for your TFSA by the end of February. So if you're going in January 1st, assuming you know all that, that hasn't been calculated yet. And 9 times out of 10, what you're going to find is you got to wait till the end of February, beginning of March, and then you'll have a more accurate scenario. The other tip that I would mention is calling that tips line. If you're doing the 1-800 number, one thing to remember is you will need your SIN number. This is how the government tracks who you are. If you do not have that, they will not give you any information. So if you put it away or don't know where it is, go to your tax filings, find what your SIN number is, because that's a very important point to know if you want to get what your actual room limit is.
Yeah, you don't want to wait on hold for a long time and then not have the number handy and have to call back. Like, that would be a very bad afternoon if you had to go through that bureaucracy more than once.
That's right.
But for the update, it's important to note financial institutions generally only update CRA on the TFSA contributions once a year. That's common. So if you go to the My CRA website, you log in, you see a TFSA limit, and it doesn't look like it's right, it's possible the financial institution hasn't updated CRA yet with all the contributions. So like Kevin said, you might want to give yourself a bit of time, perhaps check into March. That way you'll be more confident they have all the different data there, and you'll have a more accurate number when it comes to your contribution room for the TFSA.
Yeah, and then once we've done that one, I mean, basically we want to start looking at what tax filing dates we have to come up with for scenarios. So again, there it is. We're dealing here with the CRA website, which is the Government of Canada, that's telling you these are the dates that you really have to know. For filing for 2021, March 1st is the deadline for your RSP, RP or PRPP, and SP contributions. So
lots of acronyms there, but for most folks, it's just the RSP. You don't have to worry too much about the other one. Most folks, it's the RSP deadline, which is March 1st.
Yeah, once you've made that, that's the March deadline. If you want to make anything that goes for your 2021 taxes, anything after that will not apply till 2022. Your filing date, of course, for your taxes is April 30th. If you've got a deadline, then you are not basically self-employed. And that's the biggest one, because if you look, June 15th is the deadline to file your taxes if you or your spouse or common law partner are self-employed. Otherwise, for everyone else, it's April 30th. That is the big factor. And then, of course, payment dates. Well, if you owe money, you owe when you file your taxes at April 30th. That's the sort of deadline for pay dates. And I think that includes most of them, as I fumbled my way through this at the point in time.
And these change year to year. It's fairly consistent, that April 30th to June 15th. That March 1st number for RSPs, it's the first 60 days. So often it does fall on March 1st. But if you have a leap year, that means you get an extra day in February, which means it might not be March 1st. It might be February 29th for that particular year. But the formula, first 60 days of the calendar year, you can make an RSP contribution and use it on your prior year's tax return. So that's how they determine the deadline. It's 60 days into the new year. So we've covered lots of information here. We looked at the RSP limit, the TFSA limit, looked at how those limits are calculated, where you could find that information, notice of assessment, or online or through that TIPS phone number, and then some of the common deadlines that people have to be aware of. All of this through the lens of investors. Anything you want to add, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I think that covers everything that we wanted to touch base on. Remember, anything that you're dealing with tax filing or tax slips or deadlines or the RSP, consult your financial professionals, whether they're your investment advisor, your accountant. Make sure they all know, because if dates change and you're missing something, you want to know in advance. And don't leave it till the last minute, because that's always the worst thing. If you haven't realized it's a leap year and you think March 1st is the deadline and you're going in March 1st for your RSP contribution, you may be out of luck. So make sure that you know what's going on, consult people early, and you should be fine with your tax filings.
Yeah, and if you have any questions for us, by all means, get a hold of us. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, chatwithclintonandkevin.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether it is on taxes or anything else in the financial world. Let us know. We're happy to help out. Simply fill in the form and would get back to you as soon as we can. So we appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back again soon with another video. Until then, everyone stay safe. Take care.